Hello and welcome to our latest installment of the SMCCamp Family Honors College's Fireside Chats. Today, I am excited to introduce to you Blake Zante. He is the Executive Director of the Kenneth L. Maddy Institute, and as an alumnus of the Maddy Institute's Legislative Intern Scholar Program, Zante's journey has been rooted in a commitment to public service and civic engagement. A government affairs and communications professional, Zante worked as a district representative to former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, as press secretary to State Senator Andreas Borgeas, and operated a public affairs consultancy. Beyond his professional commitments, Zante remains deeply engaged in community service and advocacy. He serves as a Fresno County Planning Commissioner, a board member for both the Fresno State Alumni Association and the San Joaquin Political Academy of the Fresno Chamber of Commerce, and a member of the Fresno Rotary Club. Zante earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Fresno State. During his time at the university, he served as student body president and received a President's Honors Scholarship from the SMCCamp Family Honors College. Zante is an alumnus of the Capital Fellows Program and completed his master's in public administration earlier this year. In recognition of his exemplary contributions, Zante was named to Fresno Business Street's 40 Under 40 class in 2021. He was raised in the San Joaquin Valley and is proud to continue living in and giving back to his home community with his wife, Gina. So Blake, welcome. Thrilled to have you today.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate it. And thank you for hosting this program. I think it's a really, really cool way for alumni to connect with their other alumni and then also current SMCCamp students as well. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and it's fun for me too, because I'll meet high school students who are looking at different places to apply to, and can also refer them to these as, a way for them to think about how their major and aspirations might be a good alignment with the Honors College at Fresno State. So yeah, I think it's got a lot of great benefits. So happy to do it. And thank you for joining today and sharing a little bit about your story. So let's first begin with your background. Where did you grow up? Why did you choose to attend Fresno State and the Honors College?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm born and raised in Fresno, so I actually am a Fresno hometown kid. And it's funny enough, I went to Clovis West High School, and at the time, a lot of my friends wanted to move away. They wanted to go other places, not only in California but across the nation. And so I kind of, I guess, was looking outside of the area as well when I was, looking at colleges and thinking about doing something else. But I remember my school counselor at the time said, "Well, you should, give this a shot. It's probably a long shot. Apply for the SMCCamp Family Honors College." And so I said, it sounded like a great program. I, obviously had read up on it and learned about it, and so decided to apply. And I will never forget getting that acceptance letter in the mail. I was so excited. I still have it framed, actually. Funny enough, in my office at home. And that was just a transformative moment. So I decided to stay in Fresno, and greatest decision ever. Would not change a thing for the world, going to Fresno State.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I meet periodically with Dr. Attar, and yeah, he tells me that there is an extremely high acceptance rate for those who do get one of those coveted spots. Yeah, which I just think speaks to the program itself and the opportunity it provides to students. So that's great. And then what high school did you attend in Fresno?
So I went to Clovis West High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And great. And then did any of your classmates from high school join? Because I know quite a few local people do go to the alumni or to the Honors College.
We did. Yeah, we had a few of my classmates. I think I want to say quite a few, but at least maybe 5 or 6. So a pretty big percentage of folks in our class were actually Clovis West graduates. And funny enough, one of them ended up being my roommate for several years. We didn't know each other too well in high school, but in college, when we were SMIT camp scholars together, became roommates, and then eventually was my best man in my wedding. So just kind of speaks to the connections that the SMIT camp program, outside of the academic rigor, a lot of the lifelong personal connections that can develop from the program.
That's great. And then in high school, what kind of activities did you participate in?
So I was involved in a few different things at cross country and track. I was really into running. Maybe not so much as of late. Probably should get up on that a little bit more. But I was involved in FCA as well, in the leadership there. I was involved in a couple of other leadership organizations, Honors Society, things like that. And so I think that's sort of what got me in, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a second, but sort of what got me interested in leadership and public service was some of those early on experiences that I had then.
Yeah, that's great. Great. All right, so moving on, let's talk about your college experience. Do you have a favorite memory that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I definitely would say highlight of my college experience, favorite memory. Well, there are a lot. There are a lot to list off, but I would say probably the number one was being the ASI president. I just think that was such a really both challenging and just such a great experience to learn a lot of new skills, do a lot of great cool things on the campus and off the campus. But I would say highlight was winning the election for ASI president. That was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, and campaigning it's a different experience just given it's a big university and trying to get student participation in those elections. So yeah, that's great. And then I would
Absolutely.
imagine too, being part of the Honors College allowed you to have kind of a core group, right, that you could lean into for support in that election process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still, I mean, obviously, still to this day, keep in touch with folks from our class. But, it really was. The thing with this honors college is that so many students are involved and, are well connected across the university. They're involved in leadership, not only political science, but biology, or in some of the STEM majors, or in other clubs and organizations that you may not be connected to. And so it is a really great opportunity, if you build those relationships, to get to know a lot of people outside of your circle. So I thought that was one of the cool aspects of the honors college as well, is walking into the office and interfacing with folks maybe who they're not your major, they really have no overlap with your field of study, but you kind of share that common bond as a SMIT camp scholar, and so you're able to get to know them and interact with them in a lot of cool ways.
And being ASI president, is that something you would have that you had as a goal when you were entering college, or how did that come about?
At first, no, not at all. I would say it was something I was sort of interested in. I think it kind of was shaped over time. I was working at the dorms office at the time. It was called University Courtyard, at the front desk, and I was a freshman. That was my first kind of college job. And I got to know a lot of people who were moving into campus, were, involved. They would come into the office all the time. I would get to chat with them at the front desk. And so, funny enough, that sort of inspired me to run for the student senate at the time. And so that's how I kind of got roped into ASI initially. Was I became the senator of resident affairs, so on campus dorm students, representing their needs and interests, and then later on progressed to vice president and then president my senior year. So it
Oh,
kind of
that's
ended up as a chain reaction for my freshman year.
yeah. Yeah. You sharing your experience. So I was the vice president of finance for ASI my senior year of college. And yeah, it was something where didn't necessarily plan to do. It was more of, it was a scholar a year ahead of me who had that role for a couple years. And he now is the president of a local business in Fresno. And then, yeah, with that vacancy that opened up, decided to throw my hat in. And so I think that my experience is that being surrounded with people who are, looking, and it kind of normalizes putting yourself out there. And so it allows, I think, for more individual growth in the process. So no, that's cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, I mean, you were the ASI president. Was there any other experiences you had that really maybe you look back now and you're like, gosh, that's really cool that I did that. And you did something greater than you would have thought when you first started college.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it really does all go back to the Smith Camp Honors College. I think it opens a lot of doors and opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have. Another thing that I ended up doing as a result of Smith Camp as well, again, going back to that relationships aspect and how important it is. But I met some fellow scholars who were members of a fraternity. And so they encouraged me to join the fraternity with them. I ended up becoming president of the fraternity as a result of that. So I think that's where, again, another leadership experience that I wouldn't have otherwise come into contact with, at least I don't think I would have if it were not for Smith Camp. Smith Camp, as part of the, academic requirements, you're required to do an honors, join your honors program of your specific college. So, the College of Social Sciences has its own honors program, and then you're required to put together an undergraduate research project. That's something I probably would not have done if it were not part of the Smith Camp program. So, these are the sort of experience, it really exposes you to a broad range of academic, leadership experiences that I don't think you otherwise would normally get exposed to. So I guess maybe those are a couple of other examples that I would attribute to Smith Camp.
Yeah, yeah. So in hindsight, anything you would have done differently?
I'd like to say no. I think maybe, one of the things, and I still have this bad habit today, is of overextending myself and getting involved in too many things and saying yes. I think I had that tendency in college. I've gotten a little bit better at it today. But I think maybe just being a little bit more judicious with my time management and not overextending myself. And I think that's something, maybe a nugget of advice to current students or prospective students who are watching this is, just make sure that, when you're committing to something, that you're not overcommitting, and that you have the time to be able to be involved and participate in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for, the students who are admitted to the Honors College are high performing individuals, and that passion for excellence and to make a difference and impact and have those meaningful experiences. I think that's good advice that a lot of people can appreciate. But then I also think that it's great to say yes when you're young and, try different things as you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. So there's definitely a balance there where you don't want to be stressed out, but you also want to be taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and then political science, how did you pick that major?
Well, originally I thought I wanted to go to law school. So I graduated from high school, picked political science. I remember shadowing a current Smith Camp scholar as I was incoming, who is a great guy. I still see him around town, but I really was interested in going to law school, and so I shadowed him. I kind of started my freshman year and realized I don't know if I really wanted to be an attorney per se, and maybe this will be asked a little bit later. But funny enough, ended up getting more interested in the political side, the legislative side, the policy side of things. And it just kind of goes to show that even though you may have this idea of, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to do this or that, be open to new experiences, because it really can evolve and change over time, as you kind of go through your journey. And you may find that this idea of what you think you want to do may eventually evolve or change. So that's kind of how I ended up picking the political science road.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because I think also as we're younger, we're not exposed to quite as much. So we, have an idea of the direction we want to go. And then as we travel on that direction, there's more avenues that are available. And so we're able to fine tune and, make U-turns as needed. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's now talk about life after college. I know in the bio we talked a little bit about the different roles you've had, but can you just expand of, what you did immediately after and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me start a little bit with um, just kind of maybe the mid to tail end of college, because it does kind of tie into what I'm doing now. So, like I mentioned, I wasn't really interested in law school anymore, and I ended up getting really interested in the political stuff, the leadership stuff, the public service, side of things. And so I ended up finding out about the Maddy Institute. And funny enough, going back to SMIT camp once again, an email came across from one of the coordinators at the time that the Maddy Institute was looking for a student assistant. And so I ended up applying for that role, ended up working as a student assistant at the Maddy Institute, and then ended up applying for the internship program through the Maddy Institute because of that. And so I got to intern in Sacramento for a summer. I then got to intern in Washington, D.C. For a summer as well. And I thought it was just an amazing experience. And definitely I decided, this is exactly what I want to do. This is kind of the road that I want to pursue. So following graduation, I did that internship in DC. It led to another job opportunity on a campaign here locally. So I moved back from DC, ended up working on a campaign, actually a couple of different campaigns. And I had always kind of bounced around in college, volunteering on different political campaigns as I got more involved. But this was really my first paid job. And so really what my job was, and it was not glamorous at all. And it really kind of instilled like a sense of humility in me of I was putting up 4x8 signs in the big, the 100-degree heat. And I was, going and knocking doors. And I thought, what? Like I graduated from SMIT camp. Like I did all this cool stuff. I had all these prestigious internships. I was student body president. Why am I, putting up signs that are, in the hard pan dirt right now? And why am I knocking on doors, having them slammed in my face because people don't want to, talk to me or whatever. So it was really an interesting moment for me because I was like, well, I don't know, am I supposed to be doing this? What's going on? But really just kind of recognize that, well, in the real world, you still, even though, high achieving student, like you still have to pay your dues. Like you still have to really grind to get to where you want to go. So I ended up doing that. I had also applied for the Capital Fellows program, which was starting right after this job. So this job concluded, the election ended, and then I ended up moving to Sacramento for the Capital Fellows program, which is a really amazing, prestigious program where you get to spend about a year in the state capitol. And so I did that. I ended up working for a state senator at the time, Andreas Borgeas, who represented Fresno. And I got placed in his office. He had hired only one other staff person, the chief of staff. And we had no computers. We had nothing in our office. And he said, I want you to be our fellow. I said, okay, great. Sounds great. I'll sign up. I'll be your fellow. So it was really cool to kind of be a part of building out an office from the ground up in such an early part in my career. And then eventually I ended up getting hired on full time and became his press secretary. That, of course, in politics, redistricting happens. People lose elections, they win elections, things change. We went through a period of redistricting, and his district no longer really existed. So I had to find another job. And so that's kind of where I ended up working for then minority leader, that later Speaker McCarthy, on his campaign first and then in his official office. So it really just goes to show there's a lot of movement in politics. There's a lot of things that can happen. And then, of course, he decided to step down last year, and I ended up applying for this role as the executive director. And it really was a cool moment to come full circle from where I started as a Maddy intern and then now serve as the executive director. So I know that's sort of a long-winded story and journey of how I got to where I am, but that's sort of I've been the last, I guess, a little bit less than a decade of my journey in my career. So it's really just goes to show, sort of just go with the flow. Don't be too rigid, and if something's changing, just sort of adapt and try to move forward as best as you can.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, because I think especially for high achieving driven students who are used to being able to plan, anticipate, execute. But once you're in the professional world, there's just a lot of moving pieces, and being able to go with the flow and choose the opportunity that resonates most with your overall goals, values, is going to make the journey that much more interesting, and you'll learn the most from it. So that's great. So now I'm curious how the pandemic has impacted your day-to-day. I mean, I know we're, now in 2024, so we're back to, business as usual. But I know in a lot of professions, it was a disruptor. And so some aspects will never be the same. And I'm curious how you're seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, at the time I was working for Senator Borgeas. I had just become his press secretary when the pandemic had hit. And so it was really an interesting time because the legislature was trying to grapple with how, it was going to respond to this. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns. So it really, I think, made me personally, and then I'll get to the overall impact that I'm sort of seeing, but I think it made me personally just be very intentional about communications and thinking through, when there is a crisis or there is something going on, how do you respond to that moment? How do you engage, and how do you decide to move forward and make decisions? And so, that was a moment where, we were trying to figure out, what information were we going to put out to constituents? There was a lot of misinformation at the time about the pandemic. And so we sort of chose to be a very neutral hub of information and resources for constituents to come to. And then, also try to proactively create solutions to, help small businesses, help other, struggling entities during the pandemic. So at the time, of course, I'm biased, but I thought that was a really great approach, and really sort of helped a lot of folks have some faith and confidence in their representatives. But overall, day to day, I mean, I think something that I am get very frustrated with this is obviously a very fun thing, so this does not get included, but I get very frustrated with Zoom and virtual meetings. And I think I've seen that become more prevalent, and sometimes they're more convenient. It's just easier to, connect with someone virtually because you don't have to travel, or they're based in a different area. But I'm someone who loves the in-person, engagement. Let's have coffee, let's have lunch meeting. I even will travel to someone, in a different city if I think it's worth, meeting with them in person. So I have seen the virtual meetings become more prevalent. And I think in an industry, in politics and public service, where everything is built on relationships and forging those connections, I think that's how I've seen, maybe I guess an impact is you just don't have that same in-person connection that people once did pre-pandemic. And I think we see it trickle down, in our politics and in Congress and the legislature, where policymakers are not connecting with one another like they used to, and they don't have that relationship. And then it kind of evolves into a more contentious relationship rather than, we can disagree on policy, but let's still be friends at the end of the day. So I guess, that's sort of a big answer, but that's how I've seen it impact my industry day to day.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's a good reminder to, yeah, take that time to have the drive and connect with people when it makes sense. So let's transition now. I know the Maddy Institute has a vision for its role in the overall California politics. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's a really cool vision that you all have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we really have three key tenets of the work that we do. Number one is developing and inspiring the next generation of leaders. And so, like I mentioned, our legislative internship program, we have a lot of alumni who have come through that program. A lot of them also SMIT Camp alumni as well. And I think a couple of them have been on this program. I noticed Ian Wieland is an alumnus, and Raj Singh, who just became Raj Singh Badesha, excuse me, who just became a judge. Both are Maddy alums and both are SMIT Camp alums. So that's really a key tenet, is trying to train that next generation of leaders. And that helps, by creating thoughtful, bipartisan, solutions-oriented leaders. Eventually, helps our state and our national government, because we have folks that are making decisions or involved in that process who really have a strong, deep-rooted background in that sort of thinking. So that's something that we do. We also focus on increasing citizen engagement and participation in the democratic process. So that's sort of the second tenet of what we focus on. So trying to, bring folks and connect them with policymakers, connect them with, the issues that are going on. People are busy. I like to say people are busy. They're raising kids. They're taking them to soccer, cross country practice. They've got their jobs. They're taking care of other things. So they don't have time to pay attention to the public policy issues going on day to day that impact their daily lives. And so I like to think that, the Maddy Institute sort of tries to be a resource and an educator, facilitator on those different issues. So that's sort of another thing that we do. And then lastly, provide nonpartisan public policy analysis on important issues impacting our region. And so that sort of ties into the second tenet as well, but we also just try to be a nonpartisan resource for information, so folks can come and learn about an issue. We have a lot we have a lot of biased informational sources that exist today on, all across the political spectrum. It's not attributed to one side or the other. So I think what our goal is to be a trusted source of information and just present the facts as they are on certain public policy issues that are important to our region. So those are sort of our three key missions, but definitely would encourage students who are interested in politics or public service. We're not exclusive to political science. We have people from all kinds of majors apply for the program, and definitely would encourage students to check it out and apply if they're interested.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right, we'll transition now to a little bit about your personal life. So I know you went away to Sacramento. You had done summer internship in DC and SAC. How did you ultimately decide to call Fresno your home?
Well, number one, at the time, my fiance was based in Fresno. So I wanted to make sure that we were in the same city. So I moved back to Fresno. So that was very important. Family is also in Fresno. My family is very deeply rooted in the Central Valley. And so this is home. Fresno is home to me. I did have an opportunity to move to Sacramento, live in Sacramento, but decided that, I wanted to be here and be a part of the Central Valley community, because I think it's a very special place that a lot of people don't, realize until maybe a little bit later in life or your career. And so I was very fortunate to be able to move back home. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then how do you define success, and how has that changed over time?
I think, the key to success is persistence. sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you may have a little bump in the road in your career and you have to adjust and pivot, like I had mentioned earlier. But I think just being persistent and really having the tenacity and the drive to keep going, even when it gets tough, you will eventually find success. And I think that's something that I've learned is, don't get discouraged, don't give up. A quick story about that is, I ran for local office in 2020 during the pandemic. And so that was really challenging. I ran for the Board of Education. It was a very close race. I lost, and I learned a lot from that experience, but it didn't discourage me to, give up and completely, leave public service or politics. It really inspired me to keep going. And so that's what I would encourage folks to do is, if you do hit a bump in the road in your career, or in your academic journey as a student, it's okay. It's not always going to be perfect 100% of the time, even though a lot of SMIT camp students are perfectionists. So just know that you can adapt and you can, have that persistence and move forward.
Yeah. And then you mentioned earlier about being careful about not taking on too much. So what habits have you developed to best handle stress?
I think just really trying to be diligent with my calendar and really block off personal time. And something that I've recently sort of implemented in my previous roles, I did not do this well, but now I've sort of really kept personal time, family time, weekends as sort of a sacred time to just be able to kind of recollect myself, refocus my energy for the next week. But I really think, I'm very fortunate. Spending time with family is really, really important to me. And so I think that's kind of what helps me refocus at the end of the day is just dedicating that personal time that you're not gonna answer emails, you're not gonna be on your phone, which I'm also very bad at. But I think it's just something you have to consistently work at over time, and it does take constant practice.
Yeah. And I think it's trying different things that to identify what allows you as an individual to recharge, because what works for some people doesn't work for others. So exploring those. And yeah, great.
Absolutely.
And then, so you mentioned spending time with family. What else is keeping you busy these days?
Oh wow. Well, I am. Uh, I guess in terms of other things, just Fresno State football season is coming up, so we're big Fresno State football fans. So I'm excited for the weekend tailgate on Saturday and the game. So that definitely keeps us busy. I am going on a trip for about 2 weeks to Northern Ireland on with a bipartisan delegation on behalf of the U.S. with a program called the American Council for Young Political Leaders. So very excited about that. That's going to keep me busy for about the next month or so, being over there. And then I am just trying to also just enjoy downtime, spend time with friends and family, like I mentioned. Um, I'm not reading as much as I'd like to, but I do plan on reading a couple new books when I have some free time here soon.
Great. And then how have you stayed in touch with the honors program, Fresno State? How are you giving back?
Well, I'm presenting to a colloquium, I think, here coming up. I did talk to Dr. Attar about that, so very excited about that. I did present the colloquium last year as well, so that's been really fun. And then I think, just trying to stay in touch with other alumni. I still, have a couple of different group chats with Spit Camp alumni and other folks where we, keep in touch on what's going on with each other's lives. So uh, at the time, that's kind of what I'm doing right now, but hoping to stay connected and do more stuff like this. I think this is great.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for joining today and sharing about your journey. Let's transition to some rapid fire questions. Just, looking at your college days, what was the favorite course that you took?
I'd have to say water politics.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah, with Dr.
extremely
Holyoke. That
important.
was a great great course.
And then your favorite professor?
I'd have to say Dr. Holyoke again. He was definitely, or you know what? I have a few. Probably Dr. Holyoke, Dr. Bryant, and Dr. Hanson were all great professors. I really liked them.
Awesome. And then where was your favorite place to eat on or near campus? And what did you like to order?
Definitely would go to Taco Bell quite a bit on campus, or the Bucket, and would always, probably more so the Bucket, would always get a large pepperoni pizza. That's my go-to order there.
Nice. Yeah. And then present day, what is something that your classmates would be surprised to hear you're doing now?
Um, I don't think I don't think that they would be surprised at all to hear that I'm doing what I'm doing now. I feel like I'm pretty much the same person, maybe with a few minor changes. Um, but maybe they would be surprised that I'm not, even though I work for the Maddy Institute now, that I'm not working in like day-to-day politics anymore. Was very involved and engaged with that stuff, obviously, when I was in college, and now, not as much anymore. So maybe that's something they'd be surprised to know.
And then what would you say is the most exciting thing in your life right now?
Ooh, I would say that trip that I mentioned coming up is definitely something really exciting. I'm excited to get to go to a new place. I'm excited to get to meet new people and meet some folks from a foreign government that I don't really know much about. So that's kind of exciting.
Yeah. And then what are you completely bored of right now?
Ooh, bored of. I would say I don't know. I would say probably like virtual meetings. This does not count. This does not count. This is a great fun conversation, but probably like virtual meetings and emails. I feel like the constant onslaught of emails is like exhausting. And so I just sometimes I'm like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
Yeah, yeah. And then you mentioned you're not reading as much as you'd like to. Is there a book that you've reread multiple times or have gifted to others frequently that's meaningful to you?
Yeah, I do really like Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. That's probably one of my favorite books. It's about Abraham Lincoln and sort of how he surrounded his leadership style and how he sort of surrounded himself with all of his political competitors in his cabinet and as his close advisors. And really, really interesting. And love Doris Kearns Goodwin's work. She's visited Fresno State before, and would definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested.
That's cool. And last but not least, one piece of advice you'd give to college students.
Ooh, I would say just, have fun and, try to experience new things. I would say, definitely get involved in at least one thing. I think it's easy to get bogged down with, your academic work which can be very challenging and a huge time commitment. But if you have the time and the ability, I would say try to get involved in a club, in an organization, in a leadership role, in some sort of, maybe it's your honors program, maybe it's your, college, fraternity, or your, some sort of other club that maybe is like the chess club or something. I don't know. Just, I would say try to get involved in something that's a lot of fun and that you can do to sort of, relax and do something outside of your classwork.
Yeah, great advice. All right. Well, Blake, thank you so much for your time today. Do appreciate you joining and sharing your experience and how you got to where you are. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right. You too.